Jack Rivers wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the broken atmospheric processor with tired eyes. 3 days he had been working on this piece of junk, and it still would not cooperate. The machine hummed and clicked, but refused to clean the air properly on Level 7 of Station Omega 7. Jack was the only maintenance engineer left on this remote outpost, and everything seemed to break at once. The station sat at the edge of known space where 3 different star systems met. Most people called it the middle of nowhere, but Jack called it home. He had been here for 8 years fixing whatever broke, and keeping the small crew alive in the cold darkness between stars. The pay was not much, but Jack liked the quiet, and the work kept his hands busy. He reached for his wrench when the whole station shook. Emergency lights flashed red, and the alarm system screamed through the corridors. Jack dropped his tools and ran toward the control room, where Pete and Maria were staring at their screens with wide eyes. "What hit us?" Jack asked as he burst through the door. Pete pointed at the scanner display with a shaking finger. "Something big just attached to Docking Bay 2. Really big, Jack. The sensors say it weighs about 3,000 tons. Maria turned from her communication panel looking pale. "No ships are scheduled to dock today. No ships, period. We are supposed to be alone out here for another 2 weeks. Jack looked at the readouts and felt his stomach drop. Whatever had attached to their station was massive, and the docking bay was not designed for anything that heavy. The metal groaned under the weight, and warning lights showed stress fractures forming in the hull. Should we call for help? Pete asked, but they all knew the answer. The nearest military base was 6 days away, even at top speed. Whatever was out, they would be long gone by then, or they would all be dead. Another tremor shook the station, and this time they heard something else. A sound like metal being carved by giant claws. Jack grabbed his helmet and suit from the emergency locker. "Where are you going?" Maria called after him. "To see what wants him so badly that it is willing to tear our home apart." Jack suited up and made his way through the station corridors toward Docking Bay 2. The sound of scraping metal got louder with each step, and he could hear the hull plates groaning under enormous pressure. Whatever was out there was trying very hard to get inside. He reached the observation window next to the docking bay and looked out into space. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. A creature the size of a small ship floated just outside the station. It had 4 powerful legs ending in claws that could tear through steel like paper. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered purple and gold in the starlight. A long neck curved gracefully up to a head that looked like something from ancient Earth legends of dragons. But this was no legend. This was real, and it was looking right at him through the window. The creature's eyes were larger than Jack's helmet and filled with an intelligence that seemed older than the stars themselves. But what made Jack's heart race was not the size or the power of the beast. It was the tears that flowed from those ancient eyes and froze instantly in the vacuum of space. In the creature's front claws, Jack could see something smaller. Another dragon, but this one was barely moving. Its scales were dull and lifeless, and its breathing came in short, desperate gasps. The large dragon saw Jack, watching, and pressed close to the window. Its mouth moved, and suddenly Jack's communication system crackled to life with words spoken in perfect human language. "Please help me. My child is dying, and I have nowhere else to go." Jack stared at the massive creature holding her sick baby and felt something break inside his chest. The mother dragon's voice was filled with such pain and desperation that it hurt to hear. "I am Vera of the Draconi people. I have traveled for many days to reach this place. The stories say humans can fix anything that is broken. Please fix my little star before the light goes out forever." Pete's voice came through Jack's helmet radio. "Jack, get away from there. That thing is dangerous. We need to call the military right now." But Jack was not listening. He was looking into Vera's eyes and seeing something he recognized. The same look his mother had when his little sister was sick with fever. The same desperate hope mixed with growing despair. Jack touched the communication panel. "How long has your child been sick?" 7 days. Maybe 8. Time moves strangely when your heart is breaking. The healers of my people tried everything, but nothing works. The sickness spreads through our young ones like fire through dry grass. Most have already gone to the great darkness. Why come here? Why come to humans?" Vera's massive head tilted slightly. Because your people survive things that kill others. Because you make solutions from broken pieces. Because I heard stories of human medicine that works when nothing else will. Jack looked at the dying young dragon in its mother's arms and made a decision that would change everything. He walked to the docking bay controls and began the emergency opening sequence. "Jack, what are you doing?" Maria's voice screamed through the radio. "You cannot let that thing inside the station. Her name is Vera and she needs help. It could kill us all." Jack paused with his hand on the final control switch. She could have torn this station apart already if she wanted to hurt us. Instead, she is asking for help. When was the last time something that powerful asked us for anything instead of just taking it? He pressed the switch, and the massive doors of Docking Bay 2 began to slide open. Vera moved carefully into the bay with her sick child cradled gently in her claws. Jack had never seen anything so large move with such delicate grace. The bay was barely big enough to hold her, and Jack had to adjust the artificial gravity and atmospheric pressure to accommodate their unexpected guest. Vera folded her wings tight against her body and settled onto the deck as gently as falling snow. Jack entered the bay through the airlock and approached the massive dragon. Up close, she was even more magnificent and terrifying. Her scales reflected the bay lights like stained glass windows, and each of her claws was longer than Jack's arm. But when she lowered her great head toward him, Jack saw only a worried mother. "Thank you for letting us inside. I know your people fear mine. I have never met your people before today. Hard to fear something you have never seen." Vera made a sound that might have been laughter if dragons could laugh. "You are different from what I expected. The story said humans were small and weak, but full of strange ideas." The stories got half right. Jack knelt beside the young dragon that lay still as death in its mother's arms. The creature was beautiful even in sickness. Its scales should have been bright silver, but now they looked like old pewter. Its breathing was so shallow Jack had to watch carefully to see its chest move. "What is your child's name?" "Pip. It means little star in our language. He was so bright when he was born. Now the light fades more each day." Jack reached out slowly and touched Pip's neck, feeling for a pulse. The young dragon's skin was fever-hot, and its heartbeat was fast and irregular. Whatever was wrong, it was getting worse quickly. "Tell me about the sickness. When did it start? What are the symptoms?" Vera's voice grew heavy with grief. "It began 3 months ago on the outer colonies. The children started getting tired and weak. Then they stopped eating. Their scales lost color, and their breathing became difficult. Our best healers tried quantum medicine and genetic repair, but nothing worked. The sickness just spreads and spreads." Jack listened carefully as Vera described progression of the disease. Something about it seemed familiar, but he could not place what. He had worked in deep space for most of his adult life and had seen his share of exotic illnesses. How many children have gotten sick? All of them. Every child under 50 cycles of age has the sickness now. Most have already died. Pip is one of the last, and he grows weaker each day. Jack felt the weight of an entire species' future pressing down on him. If all the young dragons were dying, then the Draconi people would be extinct within a generation. Your healers use quantum medicine and genetic repair. What else did they try? Everything we know. Energy healing, cellular regeneration, temporal field therapy. We have medical technology beyond what most species dream of, but none of it works on this sickness. Jack nodded and continued his examination of the young dragon. Sometimes the most advanced medicine in the galaxy could not fix a simple problem. Sometimes you need to go back to basics and think like a mechanic instead of like a doctor. He looked up at Vera's hopeful eyes and felt the enormous responsibility of the moment. A mother had brought her dying child to him because she had heard that humans could fix anything. Now he had to find a way to prove that faith was not misplaced. "I will need time to study this. Can you stay here while I work?" "I will stay as long as you need. I have nowhere else to go and nothing left to lose." Jack stood up and looked at the magnificent dragon mother holding her sick child. 3 hours ago, he had been fixing a broken air processor. Now he was trying to save an alien species from extinction. Just another day at Station Omega 7. Jack spent the next 6 hours in the station's small medical bay reading everything he could find about alien physiology and exotic diseases. The computer files were not much help since most of the information was about species that humans traded with regularly. There was nothing about dragons or creatures like the Dracani. He returned to the docking bay where Vera waited patiently with Pip cradled in her massive arms. The young dragon looked even worse than before. Its breathing was more labored, and the silver scales had started turning gray around the edges. "How is he?" Jack asked as he approached. Vera's great eyes looked down at her child with infinite sadness. "Weaker. The light grows dim. I can feel his life slipping away like water through my claws." Jack knelt beside them and pulled out his basic medical scanner. It was nothing compared to the advanced equipment that Dracani healers probably used, but it was what he had. The readings showed elevated body temperature, rapid heart rate, and low oxygen levels in the blood. "Tell me more about your people's biology. How do you breathe? What do you eat? How does your blood work?" Vera tilted her head thoughtfully. "We breathe oxygen like many species, but we need much more of it. Our blood carries twice as much oxygen as most creatures. We eat metals and crystals that we break down in our stomachs. Our bodies run very hot to power our size and strength." Jack nodded and made notes on his tablet. High oxygen requirements and hot-running metabolism. That matched what his scanner was showing. But something else was nagging at him. Something about the symptoms that seemed familiar. The children who got sick first. Where were they living? On the mining colonies in the outer system. New places where we had just started digging for rare metals. Clean places with fresh air and pure water. "Clean places," Jack repeated. "How clean exactly?" "Perfectly clean. We use atmospheric processors to remove all impurities from the air. Water purification systems that eliminate every trace of contamination. The colonies were built to be completely pure environments for our children to grow up healthy." Jack felt a spark of understanding begin to form in his mind. "What about older Dracani? Adults like yourself? Do any of you get sick in these clean places?" "Some adults feel tired there, but we thought it was just the hard work of building new colonies. We Dracani are strong. We do not get sick easily." The spark became a flame. Jack had seen something like this before during his early years working in the asteroid mines. Miners who worked in perfectly filtered environments sometimes got sicker than those who worked in the older, rougher facilities. "Vera, I need to ask you something strange. On your home world where you evolved, naturally, what was the air like?" "Full of dust and gases from volcanic activity. Metal particles in the atmosphere from natural deposits. Not clean at all by most standards. And your people thrived there for thousands of years. Millions of years. We are an old species." Jack stood up and paced around the docking bay as his mind raced. The pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made terrible sense. The Dracani had evolved in a harsh environment full of natural contaminants. Their bodies had adapted to process those impurities as part of their normal biological functions. "Vera, I think I know what is making your children sick. It is not a disease at all." The great dragon raised her head sharply. "What do you mean?" "Your people created perfectly clean environments for your children. But clean is not always healthy. Sometimes a little dirt is good for you." Vera's eyes narrowed in confusion. "I do not understand. How can dirt be good? Clean air and water should make children stronger, not weaker." Jack knelt down beside Pip again and gently touched the young dragon's forehead. "On Earth, where humans come from, we learn something important about health. If you protect children from all germs and dirt, their bodies never learn how to fight off sickness. But there is more to it than that." He pulled up some old mining reports on his tablet and showed them to Vera. "Look at this. Human miners who worked in completely filtered air sometimes got carbon monoxide poisoning even when there was no carbon monoxide around. How is that possible? Because their blood was carrying too much oxygen and not enough of other gases that help the body work properly. The filters were too good. They cleaned out things that the miners actually needed." Vera stared at the data with growing understanding. "You think our clean colonies remove something from the air that our children need to survive? I think your children are suffocating in pure oxygen. Your people evolved breathing air that was mixed with volcanic gases and metal particles. Take those away, and your blood chemistry goes wrong. Jack pulled out his atmospheric analyzer and held it near Pip's nose. The readings showed that the young dragon was indeed breathing pure oxygen with no trace impurities. For a species that evolved in a contaminated environment, this could be like slow poison. The older dragons feel tired in the clean colonies because their bodies are struggling too, but they are strong enough to survive it for a while. The children are not. Vera's massive claws scraped against the deck plating as she processed this information. But this makes no sense. How could clean air be deadly? Our healers said pure environments would make our children healthier. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. Your people survived for millions of years breathing dirty air. Maybe there was a reason for that. Jack stood up and walked to the atmospheric controls for the docking bay. I want to try something, but I need your permission first. It might seem crazy. What do you want to do? I want to make the air in here dirty. I want to add some of the same impurities that would be found on your home world. Vera's eyes widened in alarm. You want to poison my child. I want to give him the kind of air his body was designed to breathe, but only if you trust me. The great dragon mother looked down at her dying son and then back at Jack. Your people's medicine is so different from ours. We seek to purify and perfect. You seek to balance and adapt. Different is not always wrong. Vera was quiet for a long moment. Jack could see her weighing the decision. Trust the alien human with his strange ideas, or watch your child die slowly in clean, pure air. What impurities would you add? She finally asked. Jack checked his atmospheric processor manual. Small amounts of sulfur compounds like you would find near volcanoes. Trace metals in dust form. Carbon compounds from organic sources. Nothing toxic, but not perfectly pure either. How do you know this will work? I do not know for sure, but I know that perfectly pure environments can be dangerous for species that evolve in impure ones. And I know that your child is dying in pure air. Vera closed her great eyes and pressed her forehead gently against Pip's still form. Do it. I would rather try something that might work than do nothing and watch him fade away. Jack nodded and began adjusting the atmospheric controls. He added trace amounts of sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide to match volcanic gases. He introduced fine metal particles that would be found naturally on a world with exposed mineral deposits. He added organic carbon compounds that would come from decomposing plant matter. This is going to smell bad to human noses, he warned, but it should smell like home to your son. As the atmospheric mixture changed, Vera lifted her great head and sniffed the air. It smells like the old caves where I was born, like the deep places under mountains. Within minutes, something remarkable began to happen. Pip's breathing became deeper and more regular. His heart rate slowed from the rapid panic rhythm to something more normal. The gray edges of his scales began to show tiny hints of silver again. By the ancient stars, Vera whispered, he is responding. Jack watched his instruments carefully. The young dragon's blood oxygen levels were actually dropping, but his overall health indicators were improving. It was counterintuitive, but it was working. His body is learning to use the oxygen more efficiently. When air is perfectly pure, the blood tries to carry too much oxygen, and that throws everything else out of balance. Over the next few hours, Pip continued to improve slowly but steadily. His breathing became stronger, and his scales began to regain some of their natural shine. He even opened his eyes briefly to look at his mother, before drifting back into healing sleep. Vera wept tears of joy that sparkled like diamonds in the docking bay lights. You have saved my little star. How can I ever repay such a gift? You do not need to repay anything. This is what people do when someone needs help. But even as Jack spoke, he knew this was bigger than just one sick child. If his theory was correct, then thousands of young Draconi were dying in clean colonies across their space, because no one understood that sometimes pure environments could be deadly. Vera, we need to get word to your people. If other children are sick, they can be helped the same way. The great dragon nodded eagerly. I will send messages immediately. But will they believe such a strange cure? Will they trust human medicine over our own healers? Jack looked at Pip sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms with color returning to his scales. Sometimes the proof speaks for itself. As Vera composed messages to send to her people, Jack returned to his atmospheric controls and began documenting exactly what he had done. Other dragons would be coming soon, and he needed to be ready to help them. He thought about the irony of it all. The most advanced dragon medicine had failed because it was too advanced. Sometimes the simple answer was the right answer. Sometimes dirty air was better than clean air. Just another day of fixing what was broken at Station Omega 7. 3 days after Pip began breathing the modified air, his recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The young dragon was sitting up in his mother's arms, and his scales had returned to their brilliant silver shine. He even managed to eat some of the metal shavings that Jack had found in the station's machine shop. Vera had sent urgent messages to every Draconi colony, explaining Jack's discovery about the dangers of pure air. The responses came back quickly, and they were not all positive. "Many of my people think I have lost my mind," Vera told Jack as they watched Pip play with a piece of copper wire. "The healers say it is impossible for clean air to cause sickness. They say humans are primitive and do not understand advanced medicine." Jack shrugged as he adjusted the atmospheric processor to maintain the right mix of impurities. Let them think what they want. How many more sick children are out there? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands across all our colonies. The sickness spreads faster each day as more young ones are born into pure environments. Then some of those parents will be desperate enough to try anything. Vera nodded sadly. Desperation makes people willing to believe in miracles, even miracles that come from humans. As if summoned by their conversation, the station's long-range sensors detected multiple large objects approaching from deep space. Jack ran to the control room where Pete and Maria were staring at their screens in disbelief. "How many ships?" Jack asked. "Not ships," Pete replied with his voice cracking slightly. "Dragons. 17 of them so far, and more coming. They are carrying something in their claws." Jack knew without looking what they were carrying. More dying children brought by desperate parents who had heard that a human handyman could do what their greatest healers could not. "We need to expand the treatment area," Jack said. "Docking Bay 2 will not hold 17 dragons." "Treatment area?" Maria asked. "Jack, you are a maintenance engineer, not a doctor. You cannot treat an entire alien species." "I am not treating a species. I am just fixing their air the same way I fix everything else that breaks around here." Over the next few hours, Station Omega 7 transformed into something that had never existed before. Jack and his small crew worked frantically to convert cargo bays and storage areas into treatment spaces. They installed atmospheric processors in each area and programmed them to recreate the impure air that young Draconi needed. The first dragon to arrive after Vera was a massive male who introduced himself as Drake. His child was a tiny female named Luna, who was so weak she could barely lift her head. Drake was suspicious of human medicine and demanded to know exactly what Jack planned to do. "I am going to make the air dirty," Jack explained patiently. "Your daughter evolved to breathe air with impurities in it. Pure air is slowly poisoning her blood." Drake's golden eyes flashed with anger. "Draconi healers spent centuries learning to create pure environments for our young. You expect me to believe that centuries of medical knowledge is wrong." "I expect you to look at the evidence," Jack replied calmly. He gestured toward Docking Bay 2, where Pip was now strong enough to fly short distances around his mother. 3 days ago, that young one was dying in pure air. Now he is healthy because he is breathing dirty air. Drake stared at Pip in amazement. The young dragon's recovery was obvious to anyone with eyes. Slowly, the great male nodded his massive head. "Show me what you do." Jack led Drake to cargo bay, for which had been converted into a treatment area. He explained how he analyzed the atmospheric composition of the Draconi homeworld and recreated those conditions using the station's life support systems. "Your people tried to improve on millions of years of evolution by creating perfect environments. But evolution does not make mistakes that big. If your species needed pure air to survive, you would have evolved on a world with pure air." As Jack adjusted the atmospheric mix in cargo bay, for he continued to explain his theory. "Humans learned this lesson the hard way. We tried to create perfect sterile environments for our children, and they got sicker, not healthier. We learned that a little dirt and a few germs actually make the immune system stronger." Drake listened carefully as his daughter began to breathe the modified air. Within an hour, Luna was showing the same improvements that Pip had demonstrated. Her breathing became easier, and her scales began to regain their natural color. "This is not possible," Drake muttered as he watched his daughter improve. "How can something so simple work when our quantum medicine fails?" "Sometimes simple solutions work because they are simple," Jack replied. "Complex problems do not always need complex answers." Word of Luna's rapid recovery spread quickly among the waiting dragons. More and more of them agreed to try Jack's treatment despite their doubts about human medicine. Jack found himself running from one treatment area to another, adjusting atmospheric mixtures and monitoring young dragons as they began to heal. Each dragon parent told the same story. Their children have been born in perfectly clean colonies designed to give them the best possible start in life. The colonies had the purest air and water that Draconi technology could provide, and in those perfect environments, their children had slowly begun to die. "We thought we were giving them everything they needed," a dragon mother named Kira told Jack as her twin sons breathed modified air for the first time. "We built these colonies to be paradise for our young ones." "Paradise for who?" Jack asked gently. "Paradise for dragons, or paradise for what dragons thought they should want." Kira considered this as she watched her sons beginning to show signs of improvement. "We wanted to give them better lives than we had. We grew up breathing volcanic gases and metal dust. We wanted our children to have clean, pure air. But you survived breathing volcanic gases and metal dust. You became strong and healthy despite the impurities in your environment. Maybe you became strong because of those impurities." As more young dragons began to recover, Jack found himself having the same conversation over and over again. Dragon parents struggled to understand how their attempts to create perfect environments had nearly destroyed their species. Dr. Nix arrived on the fourth day. He was the chief medical officer of the Draconi Healing Council, and he came with a team of advanced medical equipment that made the station's simple tools look like toys from a museum. "I have come to see this human miracle for myself," Dr. Nix announced as he entered the station. He was smaller than the other dragons, but his scales were marked with complex patterns that indicated high rank in Draconi society. Jack met Dr. Nix in the main corridor and tried to explain his treatment method. The dragon doctor listened with obvious skepticism written across his reptilian features. "You expect me to believe that our centuries of medical advancement have been wrong, that the solution to our greatest crisis is to make the air dirty like primitive times. I expect you to look at the results and draw your own conclusions." Dr. Nick spent the next several hours examining the young dragons who were being treated in Jack's improvised medical facility. He ran sophisticated scans and took detailed readings with equipment that Jack could not even identify. The results were undeniable. Every young dragon breathing the modified air was showing rapid improvement. Their blood chemistry was returning to normal ranges. Their energy levels were increasing. Their scales were regaining their natural shine and strength. "This is impossible," Dr. Nix repeated several times as he reviewed his data. "The theoretical basis for this treatment contradicts everything we know about optimal health conditions." Jack found the dragon doctor in Cargo Bay 7 staring at his medical readings in confusion. "Maybe what you know about optimal health conditions is wrong for your species." "How can millions of years of evolution be wrong?" "Evolution is not wrong. Your interpretation of what evolution means might be wrong." Jack pulled up the atmospheric analysis of the Draconi homeworld on his tablet. "Your people evolved on a world with volcanic activity and natural mineral deposits in the atmosphere. For millions of years, you breathed air that was full of what you now call impurities. Yes, but we survived despite those impurities, not because of them." "Did you? Or did you survive because your bodies learned to use those impurities as part of their natural processes?" Dr. Nix was quiet for a long moment as he considered this possibility. "You are suggesting that what we call impurities are actually necessary components of our atmospheric requirements." "I am suggesting that your bodies evolved complex systems to process volcanic gases and metal particles. When you remove those things from the environment, those systems do not shut down. They keep trying to process substances that are no longer there, and that throws your entire blood chemistry out of balance." The dragon doctor looked around at the young ones who were recovering under Jack's care. "If this theory is correct, then we have been slowly poisoning our children by giving them what we thought was the best possible environment. The road to hell is paved with good intentions," Jack said quietly. I do not understand that expression. It means that people can cause great harm while trying to do good. Your people wanted to give your children better lives. Instead, you almost destroyed your species because you did not understand what better actually meant. Dr. Nick spent 2 more days at the station studying Jack's methods and documenting the recovery of the young dragons. When he finally prepared to leave, he approached Jack with something that might have been humility. I owe you an apology, human. Your primitive methods have accomplished what our advanced medicine could not. You have saved our species from extinction. I just fixed what was broken, Jack replied. Same thing I do every day. Perhaps there is wisdom and simplicity that we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfection. As Dr. Nix departed to spread word of the cure throughout Draconi space, Jack returned to his daily routine of maintaining the station. But now his routine included monitoring atmospheric processors in multiple treatment bays and caring for young dragons as they recovered. The station that had once been a quiet outpost at the edge of nowhere had become the most important medical facility in the galaxy, and Jack Rivers, the Handyman, had become the most unlikely savior of an entire species. 2 weeks after Dr. Nix returned to Draconi space with news of the cure, Jack was overwhelmed by the response. Dragons were arriving at Station Omega, 7 faster than he could treat their children. The small outpost that was designed for a crew of 3 now hosted over 40 dragons and their young ones. Jack stood in the main corridor looking at his atmospheric readings and realized they had a serious problem. The station's life support systems were not designed to handle this many large creatures breathing modified air. The processors were running at maximum capacity and starting to show signs of strain. We need help, he told Pete and Maria during their morning briefing. I can treat maybe 50 young dragons with our current setup, but there are thousands more out there who need help. Maria pointed to her communication console, which was flashing with incoming messages. The requests keep coming in. Dragon parents from every colony in their space want to bring their children here. Some are traveling for weeks just to reach us. Pete shook his head as he reviewed the power consumption reports. We cannot handle much more, Jack. The fusion reactor is running hot, and the atmospheric processors are working overtime. If we push much harder, something is going to break. Jack knew Pete was right, but he also knew that thousands of young dragons would die if they could not get treatment. There had to be a way to help more of them without overloading Station Omega 7. What if we do not bring all the children here? Jack said slowly as an idea began to form. What if we bring the treatment to them? How do you mean? Maria asked. We teach other people how to modify atmospheric processors the same way I did here. We spread the knowledge instead of trying to do all the work ourselves. Pete looked skeptical. Other people do not have your experience with life support systems. This is not exactly basic maintenance work. It is not advanced medicine either. All you need to do is add the right impurities to pure air in the right amounts. Any decent engineer can learn to do that. Jack spent the rest of the day documenting his treatment methods in simple terms that other maintenance crews could understand. He created step-by-step instructions for modifying standard atmospheric processors to recreate Draconi homeworld air conditions. Vera found him working late in his quarters, surrounded by technical manuals and atmospheric charts. You look tired, my friend. You've been working without rest for many days. There are too many sick children, and not enough time, Jack replied without looking up from his calculations. I need to find a way to help more of them faster. What are you planning? Jack showed her the instruction manual he was creating. I want to teach humans at other stations how to treat Draconi children. That way dragon parents do not have to travel so far, and we can help more young ones at the same time. Vera read to the manual carefully with her large eyes scanning the technical details. This is generous beyond measure. You could keep this knowledge for yourself and become very wealthy. Many Draconi would pay anything to save their children. Keeping the knowledge would not save more lives. Sharing it will. Your people are strange. Most species guard their medical secrets carefully. Jack finally looked up from his work. Human medical knowledge has always been shared freely. When we discover something that saves lives, we teach it to everyone who will listen. Diseases do not respect borders or species. They are everyone's enemy. Over the next few days, Jack sent his treatment protocols to every human station an outpost within communication range. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Station commanders who had never seen a dragon in their life volunteered to help treat Dracani children. The first test case was Station Beta, 12 near the core systems. Commander Lopez reported that a dragon family had arrived with twin children who were near death. Using Jack's instructions, her engineering team modified their atmospheric processors and began treating the young dragons. It worked, Lopez reported over subspace radio 2 days later. The twins are responding exactly like your manual said they would. Their breathing improved within hours, and their scales are getting brighter every day. News of the successful treatment spread quickly through human space. More stations volunteered to help, and Jack found himself coordinating a growing network of improvised dragon treatment centers. Station Gamma, 5 reported treating 6 young dragons successfully. Outpost Delta, 7 saved a critically ill dragon child who had been given up for dead by Dracani healers. Mining Platform Echo, 3 converted an entire cargo bay into a treatment facility and began accepting dragon families from across the sector. But the most important development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kim at Research Station Alpha. 1 had been studying Jack's atmospheric modifications and made a breakthrough discovery. Jack, I think I understand why this treatment works. So, Dr. Kim reported during their weekly conference call. The volcanic gases and metal particles are not just atmospheric components. They are catalysts for Dracani blood chemistry. What do you mean? Dracani blood contains unique enzymes that process sulfur compounds and metal ions. When those substances are removed from the environment, the enzymes cannot function properly, and the blood becomes toxic to the dragons themselves. Jack leaned back in his chair as he processed this information. So the impurities are not just something they're used to breathing. They are something they actually need to survive. Exactly. It is like removing salt from human blood. The blood looks cleaner, but the person dies because their body cannot function without salt. This discovery explained why Dracani children got sick so quickly in pure environments, and why they recovered so fast when the right impurities were added back to their air. It also meant that every Dracani colony with purified air was slowly killing its inhabitants. Jack shared Dr. Kim's research with Vera, who translated it into Dracani and sent it to their medical council. The response was swift and dramatic. Within days, Dracani colonies throughout their space began modifying their atmospheric systems to include the necessary impurities. But changing the air in established colonies was not enough. There were still thousands of young dragons who were too sick to wait for their home environments to be modified. They needed immediate treatment, and many were too weak to travel to human stations. "We need to go to them," Jack told his team during their daily briefing. "We need mobile treatment units that can travel to Dracani space and treat children where they are." Pete looked at the logistics reports and whistled softly. That would require converting cargo ships into flying hospitals. We would need atmospheric processors, power systems, medical equipment, and trained crews. And we would need dragons willing to let human ships enter their space, Maria added. That is a big step from treating children at our stations. Jack nodded, understanding the challenges, but also knowing they had no choice. How many human cargo haulers are currently between jobs? Maria checked the shipping schedules. About 30 ships in this sector alone. The trade routes have been slow lately. Contact their captains. Offer them something better than hauling cargo. Within a week, the first mobile treatment ship was ready for departure. Captain Torres had volunteered as cargo hauler, and Jack's team had installed atmospheric processors and treatment areas in the main hold. A crew of human engineers and medics would travel to Dracani colonies and treat children on site. The first mission was to colony Nexus 7, where over 200 young dragons were reported to be critically ill. The journey took 4 days through hyperspace, and Jack spent the time training the crew on atmospheric modification techniques. When they arrived at Nexus 7, Jack was shocked by what he saw. The colony was a marvel of Dracani engineering with gleaming towers and perfectly controlled environments. But it was also dying. Adult dragons moved slowly through the corridors, and there were no sounds of young ones playing. The colony administrator Zeth met them at the docking port with barely contained desperation. "Thank you for coming. Our children fade more each day despite everything our healers try. Jack and his team set up treatment areas in the colony's main medical facility. As they began modifying the atmospheric systems, adult dragons gathered to watch with mixtures of hope and skepticism on their faces. "Your people risk much by coming here," Zeth told Jack as they watched the first group of young dragons being moved into the treatment areas. "If this fails, many will blame humans for giving false hope. And if it succeeds," Jack asked, "if it succeeds, you will have given us back our future." The treatment worked exactly as it had at every human station. Within hours, the young dragons began showing signs of improvement. Within days, they were strong enough to play again. Within a week, the colony's medical bay was full of healthy young dragons whose scales gleamed with renewed life. Word of the mobile treatment ship's success spread throughout Draconi space. More human cargo haulers volunteered to be converted into medical ships. Captains who had spent their careers moving freight now found themselves saving lives across the galaxy. The network of human treatment centers continued to grow. Stations that had never expected to see alien visitors became vital medical facilities. Engineers who had spent their careers fixing machines now spent their time fixing the air that alien children breathed. Jack returned to Station Omega 7 to find that it had become the coordination center for the largest medical operation in galactic history. Hundreds of human volunteers were working to treat thousands of Draconi children using techniques that 6 months earlier had not existed. "We did something amazing," Vera told Jack as they watched Pip playing with human children in the station's recreation area. "We built a bridge between our peoples using nothing but desperation and hope. And a little bit of dirty air," Jack added with a smile. "Never forget the dirty air. Without that, none of this would have been possible." Jack looked around at the bustling station full of humans and dragons working together and realized that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Species that had barely known each other existed were now partners in the most important work of all, saving lives. 1 year after Vera first brought her dying child to Station Omega 7, the galaxy was a very different place. The great crisis that had threatened to destroy the Draconi species was over. Thousands of young dragons were healthy and growing strong thanks to the network of human treatment centers that now spanned dozens of star systems. Jack stood in the observation deck of Station Omega 7, watching a sight that still amazed him after all these months. In the space around the station, dozens of dragons floated peacefully alongside human ships. Some were bringing children for routine health checks, while others were simply visiting friends they had made during the crisis. Pip had grown into a magnificent young dragon nearly half the size of his mother. His silver scales gleamed like polished metal, and his flight was strong and graceful. He spent most of his time playing with the other young dragons who lived permanently at the station, or visiting with human children who had become his friends. "He hardly remembers being sick," Vera said as she joined Jack at the observation window. "Sometimes I wonder if he knows how close we came to losing everything." "Maybe that is better," Jack replied. "Children should not have to carry the weight of almost dying. They should just get to be children." Vera's great head nodded slowly. "You humans have taught us much about healing, but also about living. We Draconi spent so much time trying to create perfect conditions that we forgot how to adapt to imperfect ones." The conversation was interrupted by an incoming message on Jack's communication panel. Ambassador Chun from the Human Colonial Council was requesting a conference call with Jack and the senior Draconi representatives. "What do you think they want?" Vera asked as Jack activated the communication system. "Proud to give us more awards and medals that we do not need." Ambassador Chen's image appeared on the screen, along with High Council Leader Nora of the Draconi. Both looked more serious than usual, which made Jack slightly nervous. "Jack, we need to discuss the future of human Draconi cooperation," Ambassador Chen began. "What started as an emergency medical response has become something much larger." High Council Leader Nora's translated voice added, "The Draconi Council has voted unanimously to offer humanity a formal alliance. We wish to share our technology and knowledge in exchange for continued cooperation in medical and scientific matters." Jack looked at Vera, who was listening intently to the conversation. "What kind of technology are we talking about?" "Faster than light communication systems that work instantly across galactic distances. Power generation technology that could provide unlimited clean energy. medical equipment that can heal injuries in minutes instead of weeks. And what would you want from us in return? High Council leader Nora was quiet for a moment before responding. We want to learn how to think like humans, how to find simple solutions to complex problems, how to adapt instead of trying to control everything. Ambassador Chin leaned forward on the screen. Jack, you have become something of a legend in diplomatic circles. The handyman who saved an entire species using basic engineering principles. Other alien civilizations are asking about human problem-solving methods. I just fixed what was broken. Same as always. Yes, but you fixed it in a way that no one else thought to try. That is a valuable skill. Over the next few weeks, delegations from multiple species visited Station Omega-7 to observe human treatment methods and learn about the human approach to problem-solving. The Kalari brought children suffering from a genetic disorder that their advanced gene therapy could not cure. The Vorthan asked for help with atmospheric issues on their colony worlds. Each time Jack found himself explaining the same basic principle. Sometimes the most advanced solution was not the best solution. Sometimes you needed to step back and think about the problem differently. The Kalari genetic disorder turned out to be caused by their attempts to eliminate all genetic variation from their species. Like the Dracani, they had tried to create perfection and ended up creating vulnerability. Jack suggested introducing controlled genetic diversity, and within months, Kalari children were healthier than they had been in generations. The Vorthan atmospheric problems were solved by adding trace amount of gases that their terraforming equipment had been designed to eliminate. Once again, the pursuit of purity had created more problems than it solved. We are becoming the galaxy's troubleshooters, Pete observed during one of their weekly staff meetings. Species with advanced technology coming to us when their advanced technology does not work. Maybe that is what the galaxy needs, Maria replied. Someone asked the simple questions that everyone else forgot to ask. The success stories continued to multiply. Human engineers were invited to solve problems on worlds throughout known space. The techniques they used were not revolutionary or complex. They were basic principles of adaptation and practical thinking that humans had learned through centuries of surviving in harsh environments. Dr. Nix returned to Station Omega 6 months after his first visit. The dragon doctor who had once dismissed human medicine as primitive now came seeking to learn more about human diagnostic methods. Your people see patterns that we miss, he told Jack during their reunion. We focus so intently on the complex details that we overlook simple causes. How do you train your mind to think this way? We do not train for it. We just grew up having to fix things with whatever tools we had available. When you cannot afford perfect solutions, you learn to make imperfect solutions work. Dr. Nick spent several weeks at the station studying human diagnostic techniques and learning to ask different kinds of questions when examining patients. When he returned to Dracani space, he established the first cross-species medical school where human and Dracani doctors would learn from each other. The most significant change came when the Galactic Medical Council officially adopted human diagnostic principles as standard practice for treating species that had evolved in harsh environments. The idea that pure conditions could be harmful to certain species was revolutionary, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. Jack found himself invited to medical conferences throughout the galaxy to speak about adaptive medicine and practical problem-solving. He always declined the invitations, preferring to stay at Station Omega-7 and continue his work. Why do you not want the recognition? Vera asked him after he turned down another speaking invitation. You could be famous throughout the galaxy. Universities would offer you teaching positions. Medical corporations would pay you vast sums for your knowledge. Because fame and money do not fix broken atmospheric processors, Jack replied. This station still needs maintenance, and there are still sick children who need help. But you could do so much more if you accepted these opportunities. Jack gestured around a bustling station where humans and dragons worked side by side maintaining equipment and caring for young ones. What could be more important than this? Vera followed his gaze and saw human children playing with young dragons, while their parents collaborated on technical projects. She saw species that had barely known each other a year ago, now working as partners and friends. You are right. This is more important than fame or money. The station had become something unique in the galaxy. a place where different species came together not for trade or politics, but simply to help each other. Human engineers worked alongside Draconi technicians to develop better life support systems. Dragon children learned human games, while human children learned to appreciate the beauty of dragon song. On the first anniversary of Vera's arrival, Jack organized a celebration that brought together representatives from all the species that had been helped by the Human Treatment Network. The station was filled with beings of every size and shape, sharing food and stories and laughter. Pip gave a speech in his newly deepened voice, thanking the humans for saving not just his life, but the future of his people. Young Kalari performed traditional dances alongside human children. Vorthan engineers demonstrated their latest atmospheric innovations inspired by human techniques. You know what the best part of all this is, Jack told Vera as they watched the celebration from the observation deck. What is that? Nobody is trying to make anything perfect anymore. They are just trying to make things work. Vera's great eyes sparkled with amusement. Perhaps imperfection is its own kind of perfection. Now you are thinking like a human. As the celebration continued below them, Jack reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when a weeping dragon mother had brought her dying child to his door. What had started as a simple repair job had become a new way of thinking about problems and solutions. The galaxy was still full of broken things that needed fixing, but now there were more people willing to try simple solutions before assuming that complex ones were necessary. There were more species working together, instead of trying to solve everything alone. And at the center of it all was Station Omega 7, where a human handyman continued to fix whatever was broken using whatever tools he had available. Because some jobs never ended, and some problems always needed solving. But now Jack was not working alone anymore. He had partners and friends and colleagues from across the galaxy. Together, they had proven that the best solutions were often the simplest ones, and that the most important technology was the willingness to help each other. The weeping dragon mother had brought her sick child to a human handyman and found hope. Now that hope had spread throughout the galaxy, one fixed problem at a time.